I think the assumption that kids will make bad choices unless they're controlled, that's like this overall unspoken idea that's completely false. In fact, kids make wonderful choices when they're supported and trusted.
Hi, beautiful beings. My name's Brittany.
And I'm Connor.
And we're here with Dayna Martin, who we're just so excited to connect with you, Dayna. This has been it's been a dream for a while, so thank you so much for being here.
Oh my goodness, you're welcome. It's an honor to be here. It's nice to be here with you guys today.
And wow, there's so many reasons I could say why we're excited to be talking with you and sharing the wisdom that's going to come through you today with our audience. But I think words that come to mind are just like your authenticity and your commitment to freedom and sharing that with the world and supporting others in being their authentic selves has been really touching for me and inspiring for how I want to show up in the world.
Oh, wow. Awesome. Yeah, it's a lot of cultural conditioning to get rid of when you first start a family. And I've changed so much since becoming a mother 21 years ago. But I want to inspire anybody that we can, that no matter what your path is that led you here, you always keep evolving and growing when you want to. And I've watched the two of you grow and evolve since we've been friends. And it's just so beautiful. Now that you've started a family, you guys are awesome. So again, so glad to be here. I can't wait for this conversation.
Yeah, I love that. And you're often known for this term, radical unschooling. And I wonder if you want to share a little bit about what that means.
Sure. So unschooling, I think most people have probably heard that term. And it's what about 10% of homeschoolers do. They live life as though school doesn't exist, the institution of school. And they don't believe in any forced learning. And they're focused on meeting the needs of their children as much as their own. So there's a lot to the philosophy, but it basically has to do with freedom with education. But radical unschooling takes that same freedom and extends it to every area of a child's life. So for example, I have 4 kids who have never been to school and they've never been punished. And they are 12, 15, a 12-year-old boy, 15-year-old girl, an 18-year-old girl, and a 21-year-old son. They've never been to school. They've never done a workbook. They've never done anything schooly, but yet they're happy and successful. And yeah, people are always wondering how that could be. So I'm here to share how it could be.
I love that. Yeah, and I love that you brought up this big word called force. And maybe we can talk about that a little bit, because to me, when I think of force, I think like philosophically that for me is the only thing that I see as a not good. And the opposite of that is freedom. And in parenting, what we see so often is the mechanism of force being implied as a necessary element to the parenting that we have, in front of us. Like we have to force a child to eat their broccoli, or they're never going to eat vegetables, or we have to force a child to go to school, or force them to do this thing or that thing, or they're just not going to evolve. And I'm really curious to hear what your philosophy is on that. And also, if you want to go back a little bit, just in terms of how you came to apply that to your children, which I'm sure you were kind of applying to other areas of your life before you had kids.
Sure. Well, in the beginning for me, it was all I knew when I was pregnant with my first child is that I wanted to have a natural birth. And there wasn't much support out there for me. Everybody I knew, they were telling each other these horrible birth stories. Every woman would one up each other with how much they suffered and how long their labor was. And it was so disempowering to me. So I started researching and learning about natural birth. And then with my first child, I gave birth with a midwife in a hospital. And I did it. I couldn't even believe that I was capable of it. I had a really challenging upbringing and insecurity and every level of, kind of typical upbringing in our culture. And so when I did it, something transformed me. It really did. When I realized how important it was for a baby to come into this world without force. So it started then without control, without somebody else controlling the process. And when I did it under my own power and got into partnership with my baby, it's what helped me become a fiercely protective mother. It was the inspiration for every single thing I've done since then. And my son, Devin, when I gave birth to him, I was holding him and the nurses came in the room and turned the TV on, which was really weird. And I thought at the time, and they turned the TV on and said, "Oh my gosh, you have to look at what's on," to me and the other nurses in the room. And it was the Columbine shootings happening live within, an hour or so of holding my son. And so I was breastfeeding him and looking down at him, and, this explosion of just the primal aspect of being a mother, of knowing that connection with him. And then I'm seeing mothers on TV live with kids who were, dying and jumping out of windows. And I could see their expression. The camera was showing the mothers. And it was just this incredible moment of me wondering, like, how many of those kids and parents would have preferred to stay home that day with each other and didn't know that they could, because the institution of school really does take over and makes them the priority over the family and choice. And so it was right then and there, I said, my kids will, I looked at my son and I remember thinking, you will always have the choice of where to be. So it wasn't so much an anti-school approach in the beginning, as much as a freedom of choice and children's rights that was born within me in that moment. I think everything that lined up, I was meant to experience like that. And that was the starting point for me. And so I started learning how children are some of the most discriminated people in our culture today, and how the focus of parenting is in the authoritarian paradigm in our culture. So it is how most of us were raised. It's how parents are told to raise their kids. The focus is on the needs of the parents solely, the parents' needs for quiet, uninterrupted sleep, and obedience, compliance, and convenience. And, everything you see on TV and everything you see in the doctor's offices and any kind of mainstream propaganda is about children are good when they are obedient. And I always thought that was just crap. I always hated that mentality. And so my journey began with exploring another way to be. I realized that if I'm going to be modeling that only my needs matter, my kids are going to grow up really narcissistic. I knew that because kids learn from modeling. And so I researched and started learning about something that felt really instinctual to me, and that was a partnership-based paradigm with kids. Now, people think this is crazy, as you guys know. It's amazing to me because it's so natural and intuitive, but so many people think it's crazy. And that's caring about your children's needs as much as your own. Powerfully crazy, right? I mean, and so instead of behavior modification, which is the focus to more traditional mainstream approaches, I focused on the needs under the behavior of my kids and help them get what they want. And I'm not the wall standing between them and their desires. And I just realized that everything I was told was a lie, and that it was all for the convenience of the adults and the authorities in my life to train me to train my kids. And that's where, that's a really long beginning answer of how it started for me.
I love that so much. And when you said focus on the needs under maybe you said behaviors, I forget the word you used, but I was just thinking about treating symptoms in like traditional, like Western medicine, as opposed to looking at the underlying cause and how much chaos we can add, like how many layers of chaos we can add instead of like being present with what is here and tuning in and like just going to the root cause and meeting that need.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think a common thing that I've heard from people, and then maybe something that will come up for some as they watch this, is the idea that structure and rules are the same thing, or structure leading to obedience is the same thing, and that kids need structure in order to feel safe, etc. And so, I want to get your take on structure, if you think structure is important, and also how, if it is important in some degree, how it can be separated from these ideas of rules, regulations, and that sort of thing. So allowing the child to be a free entity while also providing a safe and secure environment.
Yeah, such great questions. Parent-imposed structure isn't necessary. And what I mean by that is if it doesn't work for your child, it's not going to be beneficial. So structure, meaning like a rhythm to your life, a rhythm to your day, is something that unfolds really naturally for most families. And so my kids had different needs. And the wonderful thing about this life is I could just ask them. It wasn't like a big mystery. It's like, how would you like to lead your days? And they would tell me. My daughter Tiffany, who's 18, she really liked to like know what was going to happen each day. That was her. She liked to wake up and she'd say, what are we doing today?
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew for her, I said, do you want a plan for the day? And she'd say, yeah, I want to know when we're going to the store and when this is happening and the next thing. And so for her, I could cater it perfectly to who she was, where she liked more of a rhythm. But my other 3 kids, they were just more kind of flow, go with the flow for most of their childhoods. And so it doesn't have to be a big guessing game. You know, it's really just asking your child, what works for you? What do you need? How can I help you? How can I assist you on this path to life? And they tell you. And, you know, even when they're children like your baby's age, your little one's age, they let you know in nonverbal ways what their needs are.
They really do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like kids can create the environment that does feel safe and secure for them with a little bit of just genuine curiosity, sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally.
Yeah, and it's like when you focus on your needs too, like how do you thrive best? Some people do thrive with having a plan. I've noticed the more I pursue my business, you know, my business ideas, my business mentality, the more I grow in that way. I kind of like to have a schedule for myself, but that only evolved in my 40s. So it's just what works for me now to get certain things done. So I might make suggestions to my kids, like my daughter Ivy, she's studying to be a veterinarian, and totally by choice. She signs up for all of her classes online. She told me yesterday, she said, oh, Mom, just so you know, I signed up for a class through Harvard X yesterday. It's called The Biology of a Cell. And I'm like, wow, it's amazing. She, like, I never had to do any of that. She knew, you know, she's the self-motivated learner, and she just let me know. So she's passed some college level courses. She's studying right now, right near me. She has headphones on. So yeah, that's mind blowing to me, but it's really true that kids will create their own structure as needed.
Yeah.
When they feel it'll benefit them. So
yeah.
I love that.
Every morning and studies for like 4 or 5 hours. My other kids really didn't do that as much, but my son Devin, my first child, did a little bit more. But yeah, so as they grow, tools work and what don't, and just go with it.
I love this idea of learning just being an intuitive process that is led by our curiosity and whatever we're attracted to. And I love the way that you've not even but just like observed your children in that process and supported them in it. And I wonder if there are some areas you can speak to that have been, especially in the beginning, that were like challenging shifts for you in the way of letting them sort of lead when society has taught us like you're supposed to do it this way.
This life, I think that I might be unique in that this just became very intuitive for me, and so I didn't really have anything that I struggled with as far as letting go and trusting them. And I think you could relate to, Brittany, when you have a natural birth under your own power, you know, and I had home births with my other kids and an unassisted birth with the last one. There's this trust and connection that remains intact, you know, throughout, and it will, and it remains intact, this trust of your child.
Yeah.
And so I've always listened to them above cultural voices. There's the only hard like adjustment has been like, so my ex-mother-in-law, she really had a hard time with the way I was parenting from the beginning. Extended breastfeeding, co-sleeping, wearing my kids as much as they wanted to be held. And she took it personal when I was doing something different, as if I was saying what she was doing was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, being in that space of her basically like losing her in my choice of my children, which will always be my choice. A lot of people have decided that I, you know, was connected with to move away from me because they were not in agreement. And that I think is like a little bit of a hard adjustment. There's no question who we're going to choose. We'll always respect our kids, but when you see people not agreeing with it, that emotional aspect has been a challenge for me, where I had to kind of shift and find self-love despite their rejection. Now that's hard when we're raised in the culture that we are. To, you know, we're raised as people pleasers. And when people are pleased with us as little kids, like we can then love ourselves. And so what happens when you're an adult and people reject you, it can feel like you're hated or you're dying, you know, like it's a really interesting shift that you have to make emotionally to maintain that self-love. But as far as my kids and any kind of shift with them, I can't really think of any.
I love that.
Maybe as we go along, but it just happened easily for me.
Yeah.
From what I've heard from people, and maybe stuff I've heard, I can't remember if you shared this somewhere, but 2 areas I've heard sound challenging for people are around like allowing their children to lead in terms of food, and also what they refer to as like screen time, if they're seeing it that way. And I wonder if you can speak to that. I feel like, do you work with clients one-on-one too with their families?
Yeah, I've been doing that for about 15 years.
Cool.
I have a coaching practice, and I also have a program called, I'm known as the Unnanny. So it's kind of a funny little spin on the super nanny shows on TV where nannies are hired to go in and train up their kids. I do the opposite, and people will hire me to come into their home for a couple days to like help them figure out how to apply this lifestyle to what they're doing, and that is so fun.
Wow.
Do you do that?
Imagine.
Do you do that on your own, or do any of your kids go with you to do that?
My kids have gone with me before. Yeah.
So cool.
But so people have requested my kids coming. Actually, people have said, I really would love if Ivy could come, or or Devin, your oldest, because and we've done that actually. So we filmed a couple sizzle reels for reality shows for a show for the Unnanny. I don't know if it'll ever get picked up, and I have no attachment either way. I just keep saying yes and keep going in the direction I'm pulled or I'm drawn to. And yes, so one of the times that I went, my kids sat with their kids in a room and shared with them, found out what their needs were and connected. And I sat with the parents, and we came together at the end to connect. But yeah, it's been a great experience doing that.
That is incredible.
That's so powerful.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And what do you feel like are the fears that are coming up for people around like food, for example? Like if they don't trust that their children will want to eat in a way that's like healthful for them.
Maybe comfortable for
the parents.
Yeah, it's very hard for a lot of parents when it comes to food freedom, bedtime freedom, technology, and hygiene. Those are the 4 biggies where people feel as though if they don't force or limit or control, they have a lot of fear surrounding it. And so I've helped people with the inner work surrounding that, and everybody seems to have a thing. You know, every parent just has like a thing that's really hard to get in a trusting place with. But I think what the most helpful thing to share is the damage that control and limiting does. So when you control or limit something that your child wants or they're drawn to, it develops an unnatural relationship. Your child develops an unnatural relationship with whatever's being controlled and limited, causing them to interact differently with it than they would if they had freedom. Yeah. So for example, if somebody limited technology and said you could be on your phone or whatever for an hour a day, the child will always desire and will always have this innate need for freedom above all else. All humans are born into this world wanting freedom and trust and love from their caregivers and from everybody around them. And when you're conveying limits, saying, I know better than you don't know what's good for yourself. For one, it undermines a child's ability to trust in, what they're drawn to. And it also really screws up the whole natural balance of what they normally have, like moderation with anything. So that's the hardest thing. But once parents get that control is what's causing these negative behaviors you're seeing. It's the limiting and the control, and not the thing itself. And when you kind of lift the veil surrounding that, parents do see that, wow, a whole time I thought it was his phone making him violent and yell at me, but it was the control telling him, I don't trust you, you can't be on it. And it's a challenging thing. So how do I help people with that? In so many different ways, but letting them just see what happens. Part of the Unnanny process is allowing parents to see what happens when they let go of limits with their kids, allowing the natural time. So I don't know if you guys remember when you were teenagers, and if you were told you couldn't do something, or you couldn't listen to something, or you couldn't see something, like what happened? How did that feel? So tapping into that feeling. What do you guys feel from back then?
I feel like that's just not true. Like somebody just told me something that's not true, and it pisses me off because the truth is that we're free. And so that just makes me want to reassert that freedom.
Exactly. And so, children are human. even young children have that same desire and that same inner knowing about their choices.
Mm-hmm.
So you knew it wasn't true. So what happens when we tell our kids something could hurt them, but we know that we're too strong for that? We know that that's not going to happen. Distrust happens with parent and child, and it affects the relationship. You no longer are like a positive influence in your child's life, and every single thing you say, they're kind of questioning, is he lying? You know, truth is a really, really important aspect of this life, is being authentic and being honest with our kids. Even if it was a conversation like, say that somebody lifted the limits surrounding technology and their child was on for like 5-6 hours. An honest approach would be to go sit with your child and say, you know what, I'm kind of freaked out about, how long you've been on. Like, reassure me that you're okay. Like, just reassure me that all is well. And that's a more authentic. So I'm not saying if you have fears and concerns that you shouldn't say anything to your child about it, but it's a matter of like being honest, because I mean, as you guys know, when you're attached to your children and they're attached to you, they feel what you're feeling. If you say one thing and you're lying, they know. I mean, that's part of attachment parenting, is like your kids really are intuitive to what you're feeling. So you need to be in alignment with that and take ownership of your feelings and talk about it. So yeah, honesty is really, really important on this path.
Yeah, I could not agree more with that. Yeah, well, a question that we've gotten a few times, we made a couple recent videos on it, are like things like, are you going to teach Ilya, that's our 13-month-old, to say please and thank you? Or, you know, how do we feel about teaching manners to our child?
Behavior. Are
Oh
they
yeah,
well
behavior.
behaved?
Is Ilya well behaved? And all those things really, I mean, they don't rub me the wrong way necessarily, but I do feel like a kind of revulsion against that whole concept. Because to me, it is trying to put this perfect being into some kind of streamlined version of what feels comfortable for our culture. And I don't even resonate with the please and thank yous all that much myself, unless, you know, it feels genuinely authentic. So why would I ever try to like force our child to do that? And so, yeah, the question I have for you around manners, and also the reason I'm bringing it up is because you spoke about this one type of scenario somewhere sometime, and I bring it up with people all the time. It was about like going to the grocery store, for example, and just explaining to your child, hey, this is how people generally act in a grocery store, just so you know. And sort of leaving it at that, you know, because I think we like to fit in with culture. Some of us also like to rebel against culture and whatever, you know, just so they're set up with, here's some cultural norms, you know, and just kind of giving them that information to sit with. And I love that so much. I mean, that's like just having a conversation about that stuff. And yeah, I'm just curious if you can speak more to that, manners, and maybe, yeah, I guess it just happens so often that I'm around other parents with kids, and their automatic thing is like, say thank you, say please. And it really kind of like, kind of irks me out. And I also really understand why it's been sort of built into parenting.
Yeah, I love this. I love that you feel the way you feel already about it, because that shows that your parenting instincts are intact and they're all where they should be, because it is a really condescending thing to say to a child, to please and thank you. So the way, like, I kind of have a way that I envision it. So Conor, I always like, ask yourself before you say something to Ilya, would I say this to Bridget? And go through would I say to Bridget, what do you say, Bridget? You know, say please. What would she say? She'd be like, excuse me. What's that? What are you talking about? So kids are human just like us. If it's something that would be inappropriate or not right or not respectful to say to your partner, you don't say it to your child. And people think it's like this double standard. They're more focused on the whole paradigm of training. So this whole idea of training kids like dogs, and it's kind of a heavy thing to say, but it's true. You know, you don't ever need to talk to your child the way you would, you know, the way you wouldn't to your partner. It's so important to be respectful. So children learn manners from modeling. You guys using manners in your day-to-day life. You know, when my mother-in-law, my ex-mother-in-law would give my kids a gift when they were little, what I would do is I'd say, thanks, Nana. Like, I would be their voice. I wouldn't make them say it, but I would, you know, go through the social motions, you know, of saying, oh, thank you. And I would kind of be that until he'd look and like, okay, I got it. And the next time, thank you.
Mhm.
It's because the reason why I would do that with some people is because they would then be like, what do you say? And I want to curb somebody else doing that to my child, because then I'd be like, please don't ask me
Yeah.
Totally.
anything. So I would, out in public or with somebody that would normally really want a please or thank you, I would give that to them.
Mhm.
Yeah. I like that.
Because they're not going to say anything to you if you are in that situation. So yeah, that's one kind of trick, I guess. More to appease the other person than for my child to learn from it. But
Mhm.
Yeah, I love that so much. I just had a question, but I forgot it. And I was just wondering if, meanwhile, you could tell us where, I know I forgot to ask this at the beginning, but where you're living now and which of your children you're currently living with.
okay. So I was divorced 3 years ago. I married my high school sweetheart. I met him when I was 15 and we got married really young. And I moved in, I think when I was 18 with him. And yeah, you outgrow each other, you evolve. I evolved in a different direction. And I read this great book actually called Conscious Uncoupling. And in that book, it talked about how separation could be rather than the traditional, like really nasty negative divorce. And so I read that book. I let him know, it was over a course of many years, that I wasn't in love. And I stayed in that situation because I thought it was what was best for the kids. Come to find out, that's not true at all. Actually, it's much worse. And, all the childhood stuff that we were grown with, we're always bringing to the surface, all of our childhood issues, like so much even to this day, will affect me based on how I was raised. So this path is all about inner work and growing. And I was honest enough to tell him I wasn't in love and I wanted a separation. Well, we lived together for a year, co-parenting. He had a lot of started to get into substance abuse issues and things that were really unhealthy to be around. And so we moved to Miami, Florida, me and the kids, with his blessing. My son, Devin, my oldest, stayed with his fiance in Ohio and her family. She was also unschooled. Actually, I introduced them, which was kind of cool, setting my son up with a unschooler. But yeah, so we moved down here. So moving down here, we went from living on 43 acres of forest in New Hampshire, in the middle of the country, the nearest town, a half-hour drive away, to living in the heart of the city of Miami with 3 other kids. Crazy, but on this path, with my children growing and evolving and their needs changing as they got older, they really kind of were bored in New Hampshire also. And there wasn't a lot of ways to facilitate their learning and their interests and their passions. So coming here has been really great. So yes, Miami, Florida, I love it. The dream come true.
Warmer.
Huge difference. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Yes.
I used to live
on my own.
in Massachusetts
ahead.
and would go into
you did?
New Hampshire every once in a while, do some jobs. And I swear every time I'd go right over the border, there was like a foot more snow.
Yeah.
It was just like, that's just the way it is. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we lived in the White Mountains and we had about 6 months of snow a year.
Oh
Wow.
my gosh.
So it was pretty brutal. I remember thinking last winter, I don't think I could live here another winter. I'm not going to. And somehow everything evolved and I manifested this wonderful life.
Nice.
In Miami. So yeah, New Hampshire was great for younger kids, but for older kids, I love being down here. My daughter Tiffany, who's 18, is pursuing a modeling career. So being down here is, and that's something I never imagined. I never imagined happening. And it took me a lot to support that and to really be by her side to educate her about the industry. Because you guys, as you can assume, it's pretty gnarly. Comparing people by the way they look and having beauty be the main focus. I'm the last person that would have thought that I could get behind that. However, no agenda comes before my children, ever. Any belief that I once had, it all falls away based on what my children, where they're at and how I can support them. So in the beginning with my daughter Tiffany, I remember reading when she was 2 or 3 in Natural Mothering Magazine, I think, or Mothering Magazine, how bad Barbies are because they're projecting this false image. And I can remember her saying to me, Mom, I really want these. I really like them. And I'm thinking, I need to support her. in this, and I'm the one that needs to grow. I'm the one that has issues surrounding this.
Right.
And if my main priority with my kids is always connection, which it always is, and meeting them where they're at, I'm the one that has to grow if I have problems. The easy thing to do would be like an authoritarian approach and say, no, you're not going to do that because I'm uncomfortable, I forbid it.
Mm-hmm.
That would damage the relationship, and it's not fair, and it's not just, it's not kind. So for the last 20 years, every time I have an issue with something, I go inward, I do inner work surrounding it. And so with her modeling, at first I was scared, you know, like any parent would be. And then when I merged with her and we sat and talked and we researched it and I prepared her, and she wants me to be like, I'm her manager and I'm by her side through everything and to help her. Now I see it very different. I see it as a beautiful business in the way that we're in it. And I'm so proud of her. So my kids are my greatest teachers.
Super powerful. Yeah. And I mean, that's something that I think we both have really seen with Ilya, is how much learning we can get from them. And just like any relationship, like the things that trigger us are the things for us to, that's an opportunity, you know, Brittany,
Yeah.
talk about that a
Yeah,
lot.
so
And we
much.
talk about it in regards to this a lot, but absolutely, you know, having children in your life is just like on par with any other relationship, except they're perfect, you know, like they don't have anything in there. And so you get to see like what the purest essence of human being really is, and then what that brings up for you in terms of your blocks and your fears and your own triggers. And it's amazing. I feel like Ilya is definitely my best teacher, and that you're my second. And it's because those are the closest relationships I have.
Yeah, I feel like if we look at relationships as an opportunity to grow and like recognize that we are going to be triggered and feel uncomfortable, and that's just like our stuff is being hit, and we get the opportunity to like be with it and understand it and release it, then everything can be our greatest teachers. And I love that you said that children are so pure, because yeah, it's like they don't have all the stories and all the weird stuff that we have in there. So yeah, I just love that. I love that story about Tiffany and how she had this like pure desire, and that you were able to like move through your stuff so that you could support her. And I love that you shared that she wants you to be there for every step. And I feel curious about that. I imagine that you have such a unique relationship with your children, where it's like you're their mom, but also you're their friend and their ally, and like they're equal.
Yeah, there's just nobody I'd rather be with than my kids. And I do think of them as my best friends. I really do. And the stuff that I've done with my kids, I never would have guessed I would do. And especially like starting out on a natural parenting path. Like I've done that from day one. I've always naturally weaned. My kids all weaned at different ages. Devin was 4.5. Tiffany was 1 year, so early. She went on a nursing strike and bit me, and I yelped, and it scared her, and she never nursed again. I wrote a whole article about it. So
Wow.
you'd even still bring stuff up for me. And then Ivy, my third child, who's right over there, my gorgeous little girl, dreadlocked girl. She was 6. She nursed till she was 6, and Orion until he was 3.5. So I was either pregnant or breastfeeding for 14 years straight, or both, for 14 years straight. Isn't that crazy awesome?
Isn't it incredible?
Yes. Yeah, they've just taught me so much. I love them. I can't even like not smile when I'm talking about them.
Yeah, I love that you've, you know, had this beautiful relationship with them throughout the whole course of them growing up. And I think there are a lot of different ideas about that not being a possibility, whether it's they will
rebel,
yeah,
like when
they're going to do this
or,
and they're going to do that.
Yeah.
And you be prepared, you know, like we hear this weird
Oh,
language.
so interesting.
You just wait until ...
Like, oh, they're cute now, but
Oh my gosh. Yeah, really interesting narratives.
My kids have never rebelled because there's never been any reason to rebel. There's been nothing to rebel against. I'm not the wall standing between them and what they want, and the person helping them get what they want, no matter what it is. You know, and so when you say that to people, I think the assumption that kids will make bad choices unless they're controlled, that's like this overall unspoken idea that's completely false. In fact, kids make wonderful choices when they're supported and trusted. And so trust has a real lot to do with this. So there's never been a time that my kids didn't want to be around me that I know of. Ivy. It's okay if you did. I honor that one completely. I think that we're all just human beings living together. Really, we're all just human beings, and we're human with human emotions. And there's times when some of us are happy and some of us are bitchy and some of us are annoying, and I'm no exception. We're all just part of that dynamic. And I think because I allow myself to be human, and I apologize when I'm less than perfect, which is, as much as anybody else, and they apologize. We get each other. So, yeah, I mean, I can't think of any time where there was any kind of rebellion at all. Can you, Ivy? Because I always check with my kids because I don't want to be saying anything that I forgot. They've always had the freedom to do what they want. So some of the things that I've supported them through might surprise some people. Yeah. So Ivy, so my kids read at all different ages. Natural reading looks really different, for example, than forced reading in school.
Mm-hmm.
So for unschoolers, a natural window of readiness for reading is anywhere between the age of 5 and 15. It's like a 10-year window of readiness, which is really hard for most people to trust and support. However, I always have, without a doubt. And so my Devin started to learn to read. I think he was 9 or 10. The girls read at around age 11. And the very first book that Ivy, my 15-year-old, ever read was Marilyn Manson's biography, The Long Hard Road Out of Hell. So, and she said, I really want to go see him. 11 years old, totally drawn to him, drawn to his creativity, to his art, to heavy metal music in general, which would scare most people. Instead, I completely merged with it. I got her tickets to go see him. And she's seen him, I don't know how many times since, but I even took her to go meet him.
Wow.
So we sat on his tour bus and she talked to Marilyn Manson and I told him about unschooling, and that was a really awesome way that most parents would think, why would you dare let your child listen to him? But when you talk to your children and you hear the reasons of what they like about certain things, it transforms all of your preconceived notions. She really got him. And when he was going through drug and alcohol abuse really bad, even to the point where she saw him so drunk on stage, she didn't want to emulate that. You know what she said to me? She said, he must be going through a really hard time. I really feel bad for him.
Yeah.
So I think what parents need to realize is in a partnership-based paradigm, you have more influence in your conversations, your discussions, you and how you are in this world, way more than any kind of outside forces. It's not like there's no video game, television show, rock star that is ever going to have more influence on your child than you, unless you control and punish them and you live in the authoritarian paradigm and they do not have that connection with you. Then they're searching for somebody who gets them. And maybe it's a sad thing when kids, the only people they have to trust or turn to are people that are doing self-destructive things. But that's the thing. That's not the case with unschooling. So my kids have liked a lot of kind of unconventional things, you could say.
Okay, there's one last thing. There's something that I feel I want to mention it because I think it could feel really inspiring for people, and it inspires me regularly. I was actually reading recently your newer book, Raising Rebels. I think it's in this book. But anyway, you talked about picking up the house and cleaning and doing it with joy in your heart and really choosing to do that. And I really love cleaning and organizing. And also sometimes I could get into a space where I felt like I was doing it from a place, not from a place of joy and love. And then I could see how resentment could get in there, oh, my family members aren't picking up their things. And then realizing I'm totally choosing to clean up right now. And I love what you shared and wondered if you just share about how you decide to engage in cleaning and picking up after your kids in particular.
Yeah, this is a big one too for people. So my kids didn't ask me to be born. It's not their obligation for me to have used them as slave labor to clean the house to meet my needs. That's just one perspective of looking at it, that it's my need to have a clean, organized home, not theirs. It's my need. Now I can force other people to meet my needs, or I can take responsibility for it to do it myself. My children have never had chores. However, since they were really little, I always took responsibility to help keep everything, to varying degrees, I mean, depending upon how old they were, organized and clean. And because I set that default setting for them of what they were comfortable with in that environment, they always wanted their rooms to be at that level too. So if their rooms started to get messy, they would just ask me, you know, can you come help me? And of course, I'll go help you clean. So a lot of parents, they'll say to me, my 8-year-old, my 10-year-old, they won't clean up after themselves. And the more I tell them to, the more they resist. And you know, I think, I'm not saying that you need to be the only one cleaning. However, the way most people approach it, making it like mandatory, and they have sticker chore charts and all of these things, externally controlling somebody through punishments and rewards doesn't teach them anything other than, you know, to obey, or they're going to have their freedoms taken away. So my home has always been a place that belonged to me and my kids. And when kids feel part of it, they're part of like how your home's decorated. They have their things out, you know, most of the time parents in our culture, the kids' stuff's all tucked away in their room and their home looks like it's out of a magazine. Like they think of it as a museum of their things. And the way that I've always looked at our house is more like a workshop of our interests, and it belongs to my kids too. And so because it was theirs too, because they helped pick out the couch, they helped pick out the curtains, they helped pick out the pillows and like the decorations, they feel it's theirs and they really do take a responsibility for it. They want it to look nice, you know, they do. And they really, as they get older, they take on more and more naturally. But if I want something clean and I ask somebody, like, can somebody do the dishes? If they have total freedom to say no. Mm-hmm. And I trust that they must be busy, and it's fine. It's not a big deal. They'll get done eventually. So it's both having a positive attitude as you do clean your home, because what child is going to want to clean if you're making it look like a hellish job and you're huffing and puffing and you're swearing under your breath and why doesn't anybody help me, and you're throwing things around? There's no way your child's going to look at you and be like, oh, that looks fun. No. So it's more than just kind of going through the motions joyfully. You really just got to feel it. You know, when I look at the messes in the house, I think to myself, like, I'll see cut up pieces of paper in the corner and I'll be like, oh, that's when Ivy made this, or, you know, that's when Ivy cooked this in the kitchen. And I'm really grateful. Like, I can shift to a place of gratitude. And instead of seeing messes, I see them as like little stories of the day, and just a different mental space. So anyway, my house is clean. It is. This is how it gets done. It gets done. I have no idea how. I just have a mantra that everything gets done that I want to get done every day. And I say that to myself every day, and it always does.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I'm sure you guys with your life, you're busy too. You know, you're YouTubers, you're doing so many different things, and that to-do list is kind of always in your head. But as you guys know, and you could attest to, everything does get done that needs to get done every day.
The perfect time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if people want some more information, want to like reach out to you, or maybe look at some of your books or some services that you have to offer, where would be a good place for them to link up?
Okay, so I'm on Facebook. You could find me on Facebook just under Dayna Martin. My Instagram, official Dayna Martin. My books are at any bookstore. Radical Unschooling, A Revolution Has Begun. Raising Rebels, Parenting Advice from the Girl Your Parents Warned You About. And my new book being released is called Freeborn, Birthing Outside the Matrix.
So fun.
So fun. Heavy stuff, but fun.
Awesome.
Yeah, and people can just find me on my website, daynamartin.com. I have a bunch of other stuff that I offer and I do, but I do one-on-one coaching, group coaching. Yeah, I love to travel and speak at different places. I run a conference that I'm starting this April. I've been running conferences for several years, and this will be the Miami Unschooling Conference, so you can hear more about that sometime. You guys would be great speakers to come down, just saying.
So into so fun. Any kind of collaborative thing we can do together in the future.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I really resonate with you and love having you on our channel. It's
such an honor.
Yeah, you're kind of like a celebrity for us, and it's really exciting to have you here, truly. And just to be able to speak with you and interact with you tickles my heart.
Yeah. You guys are so sweet. Thank you. It's such an honor to hang out with you and chat, and we barely skimmed the very surface of this whole philosophy, so I'm happy to come back on anytime. We can dig deeper.
So fun. Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
So into
All
it.
right, guys. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dayna.
Thank you, Dayna.
You're welcome. I'll see you soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.